TNKR Media.
You're a geek utopian.
I don't think that Facebook, I'm not a utopian in the sense, those companies are not going to disappear. We're not just going to extract all the problems from the world. I'm hoping that there can be conversations that occur, because I know these aren't stupid people, to just have them transform their practices. Show me the data that censorship works.
Welcome to Wrong Speak, the podcast about the things we believe to be true, but cannot say. I'm Jonathan Kay. In recent months, Twitter has suspended several high-profile accounts for controversial reasons. These moves have some users wondering whether there are other social media networks out there that take a more vigilant approach in regard to defending free speech. One of those networks is Minds, that's M-I-N-D-S, a niche platform that was founded in 2015 using a transparent open source software model and a blockchain structure that allows community members to reward each other for popular content. In mid-December, I spoke with one of the founders of Minds, Bill Ottman, at the library of the Yale Club in New York City. Here are excerpts from our conversation. So, Bill, my first question, what is involved in waking up one morning and just saying, I'm going to create a social network? Who were the first members of Minds? How did that happen?
Well, ironically, we started offline, and eventually I was sort of anti-tech in the beginning, which is odd. I come from a English background in school, and I quickly saw the social deterioration happening with social media addiction, even back in like 2006, 7, 8. And we started as like a live social network. We would do these events, and they would be sort of a fusion between forums and festivals, bringing together people in real life. But we would network through.
This is like a flash mob social network type of thing, where
yes,
it's episodic.
Yeah, we would do a series of events. We did one at UVM.
What's UVM?
University of Vermont.
Okay.
And we brought together professors and students and student government, and actually got the university to divest from weapons manufacturers. We dug in the stock portfolio, but then we also had a music festival to go with it. And then, but Minds is apolitical. That was just one topic that some people chose to pursue. But we found that it wasn't scaling. And so then I just dug into the whole world of open source and realized that there's this rift in technology between transparent ethical tech versus surveillance-based unethical tech. And that there was this whole world involved on the internet and potential for a new network to arise that was based on transparency and privacy and
so these are big concepts, but bring it down to earth a little bit. On a practical level, what is the difference between how Minds operates and how Twitter operates? Because I think to a lot of people, Twitter, perhaps more than Facebook, Twitter does seem transparent, right? Like I tweet something, you see it, you tweet something, I see it. Tell me a little bit about how Minds is more transparent than other social media networks.
So the software is fully free and open source, meaning anyone can go to github.com/Minds, go through our source code, look at our algorithms, understand how the newsfeed is operating. Is it in chronological? I mean, we know that on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, they have thousands of variables and different AI programs running in the background that are determining what is suitable for the user to see.
So when I start up Twitter, there's one thing that says tweets you may have missed or something like that, and that's populated by content that some algorithm is determining. Mm-hmm. You're saying to the extent Minds has such algorithms, those algorithms are there for people to look at.
Yes, of course. We're committed to 100% free and open source software forever. We're never going to bring in malicious third-party tools, because then we're actually risking our own users' privacy by exposing them to interacting with untransparent software.
Do you ever get people who actually do look at the algorithms and critique them and say, hey, I don't like what this subroutine is doing, or do they ever engage with you on technical issues like that?
Yeah, we have thousands of people engaging us on technical terms. That's the beauty of open source as well. It's this live collaboration of code. And with our default newsfeed, we're committed forever to be raw and chronological. So algorithms will only ever be brought in as secondary, optional features for users. So algorithms are not inherently positive or negative. They're just certain types of curation based on different factors.
So if I'm following somebody, it'll appear in chronological sequence, unlike, say, Facebook, where it's kind of like this alchemist brew of what I see.
Yes. And that is actually... It's so simple, but it's so important. You're only reaching between 3 and 5% of your own followers on Facebook. This moving into Instagram, YouTube, the default page is a mishmash algorithm cocktail. It's happening slowly on Twitter a little bit too. And the core purpose of a social network to us is that I follow you, I want to see all your posts. You follow me, you want to see all my posts. If you post too much and you bother me, I unsubscribe from you. I think that is a simple tenet that is so important, that the user knows what they want to see more than the network knows what the user wants to see.
And to be fair, that is more or less how Twitter operates.
More or less. Twitter is honestly way better than Facebook in regards to algorithms. Facebook is you're barely reaching your fans. I mean, we had millions of followers on Facebook, and 5-10 years ago, you could reach a lot of people and drive a lot of traffic through there. And now it's a waste of time.
Because it's been diluted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this is soft censorship. This is a way we don't know what these variables are that are determining what is seen. We don't know what kinds of shadow banning and different types of factors are involved. And this is why I believe, and most of us at Minds, I would hope, and the community in general, that an open source, private social network is destined to rise up, whether it's us or a network of networks and us working together with others. Wikipedia did it with encyclopedia. It's the top 10 website in the world that is open source, community driven. It's not to say that other encyclopedias don't matter, but it did a very special thing. And that's going to happen, I think, with many other industries.
So let's talk a little bit about numbers. How many users do you have on Minds?
About 1.5 million.
Which is a lot, but it's still a niche social network compared to the billions who exist on Facebook, for instance.
Yeah.
How come Minds has a sort of, I'd say, a neutral to wonky content reputation, where something like Gab, which maybe some listeners haven't heard of, but is also a niche social network, has this reputation as being this sort of hard, right-wing, somewhat phobic, and indeed racist social network? Like, how did that happen that these two reputations came to exist?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the management of Gab is partisan, and that comes out in their Twitter. I mean, I don't think that the owners of Gab are racist. I think that they are partisan. They have clear, open, obvious political leanings, and that's okay. That's their right, and it definitely is attracting more of that polarization. So, but
it's a little bit more than that. I think from what I've read, a lot of people who've been flat out banned from other social media networks have gone to Gab. I don't get the sense that that's the case with Minds. Like, who are the people who are coming to Minds?
We are getting that, but we're also getting a huge number of people from the cryptocurrency blockchain world, because we leverage blockchain in our stack. So we have a whole incentivization system where basically you earn tokens for your contributions on the network, and then you can use them to get more exposure on your post. It's sort of more of a decentralized architecture running on Ethereum, which is more of an uncensorable payment platform, because we're seeing that payment platforms are starting to make decisions based on content.
So you just said a whole bunch of stuff that everybody's grandmother is going to be like, I'm not getting on this platform because you have to be a tech wizard to get on. And even I consider myself pretty teched up. I've written about blockchain. I've written about some of these concepts. I got to admit, it wasn't intuitive when I got on Minds. I felt almost like it was someone's science project. Have you ever gotten critiqued on that basis, that it's more complicated to use than some of the other platforms?
I think that we have improvements that we can make in terms of UX. Once you're signed up, it's very simple. You post, you upvote things, you comment on things, you go through blogs and videos. The user experience is very similar to major social networks, except we have you have a wallet basically on Minds, and you earn tokens every day, which are stored in the wallet, and you can do all these things with tokens. We wanted to create a reward system in parallel to the regular social network.
And just to be clear, it's not like you're spending the currency on eBay stuff. You're spending the currency on promoting your own content.
Or tipping other users. You can subscribe monthly to
Almost
other users.
Like a mini micro Patreon model?
Yeah, it's like a crypto Patreon model. And you can also tip, and you can access premium features. You can do advertising with them.
But from a public relations point of view, do you ever get people who say, wait a sec, Twitter and Facebook don't involve currencies? Maybe it's Minds that is running some kind of untransparent operation. Like, doesn't the actual transactional nature of what you're describing, whatever its intentions, give at least some casual users the impression that there's something non-kosher going on?
Well, the Ethereum is basically a decentralized database.
It's like Bitcoin.
It's like Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
But you can run programs on top of it, which are called dApps, or decentralized apps. You can write smart contracts to tell it, so, hey, if I send you tokens, then X is going to be spit out to me. You can program a contract on the network. And again, we're sort of diving into a little bit of the tech stuff, which we have a thriving tech geek community, but we also have artists, musicians, just regular social media people who care about their privacy generally. We're getting a lot of that fallout from Cambridge Analytica and the NSA spying, people who just, they're not techie, but they just don't want to be spied on. And that's a rapidly growing movement in social media. It's just, if you have the choice between a social network that spies on you and one that doesn't, and you get benefits from both, okay, maybe you try both. And we're seeing that. I mean, I shared a post the other day from, even though we're only 1.5 million users, people are getting more reach on Minds than they are on Facebook and Twitter. And this is odd, but it's sort of a strange side effect of the restrictive algorithms on Facebook, which don't even let you reach people. And we have this baked in reward system so that if you work hard and you produce great content, you boost it, you're going to keep getting people to see your stuff, and you're going to earn thousands of followers.
So great content means different things on different platforms. So on Facebook, it could mean a long essay pandering to the partisan inclinations of your followers, or it could mean photos from your honeymoon. On Twitter, it could mean trolling. What does great content look like on Minds?
Original, creative, artistic content.
What's the character limit on a Minds post?
It's like 2,000.
Okay.
It's
almost a blogging medium.
It is, yeah. We have a standalone blogging tool as well. So you can upload videos, you can blog, you can create groups, you have a news feed. And we're going to be bringing in video conferencing soon, video chat, live streaming hopefully next year. And, we're appealing to creators right now because creators are struggling on the internet. They're, getting their reach restricted. They're getting demonetized. You see this whole Patreon fiasco going on right now.
And just to be clear, we're having this conversation in early December. And YouTube and Patreon have just deplatformed several individuals, arguably for political reasons. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been compelled to deplatform people on Minds?
Well, if they are violating the law, if they're inciting violence.
So it's a high standard.
We try to have as open a content policy as is humanly possible within the law. And that, I think, there's a gravity on the internet that is demanding social networks like this that just are objective. They're following the law, but they're not making these weird gray area determinations about what is and what is not offensive.
So when you say the law, presumably you mean American law.
American law, U.S. law.
And the United States has a fairly lenient free speech standard compared to other countries.
Yeah. And so, for instance, we got like 150,000 users from Vietnam that signed up a few months ago. On January 1st, I believe, a quote-unquote cybersecurity law goes into effect in Vietnam, which is essentially a revolving door between their government and Facebook and Google, which would allow their government to surveil users and also request takedowns. So some major journalists in Vietnam signed up. I mean, Reuters covered us about this. They all came because, they don't want that. And so we have a very strange, diverse community of just people who are experiencing these major problems with major social media.
So we've seen a controversy recently with Twitter suspending, or in some cases all out banning some users because they've run afoul of policies about dead naming transgender people, most famously in regard to Megan Murphy, who's a feminist in Canada, which wasn't so much a legal issue as more of I'd say a political or ideological issue. Are you telling me that there are no political or ideological lines that you follow in terms of suspending people, that it's strictly on the basis of speech that's either legal or illegal?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in edge cases, with certain types of obscenity law, there's some gray areas where, look, I mean, especially with inciting violence. I mean, if you're going to follow the Supreme Court definition, that would be the Brandenburg test, yep, which would talk about imminency and specificity.
I think it's a realistic threat of imminent lawless action,
right?
Which means real law, not jaywalking, but actually going out and being violent to other people.
Yeah. So that's an ideal. I think that with social media, if someone is, if they're threatening violence, then that's not okay. So, we're determinations about specificity. We're, going to be a little bit on the safer side. But if someone is joking about death, then you need to be able to look at each post on a contextual basis to try to give it the time it deserves, and not just have an algorithm or AI sweeping through and making these decisions.
So here's a question that goes to the business side of things, because I know that Facebook and Twitter employ thousands of people that just go through the mundane work of something is reported and then they look at it and say, well, that's okay, and that's not something computers can do now.
Right.
You're running a small outfit. I'm guessing you don't have hundreds of employees.
We don't.
How do you do that mundane grunt work of going through posts that people complain about?
Well, we have a reporting system, and we have a good handful of full-time admins going through that stuff all day. And that's a big cost for us. And we basically, our more open content policy diminishes that overhead. The overhead that Twitter and Facebook have for content moderation is way bigger because their terms are so much more restrictive. So, they're banning so much stuff that really doesn't need to be banned.
Where does that end? Because from what I can see, Gab, which is this reputation of being this crazy right-wing website, social media network, looks like they don't ban anything. So, I mean, I guess if
they do.
If they do?
They do,
Because if you really want to save money, you don't hire anybody and just let it all online.
Right. Well, I mean, that shooter was on their site and basically made his final message from Gab.
But they banned him post facto.
They banned him, But that post you would never have really been able to know. I don't think it's their fault. It was cryptic, yeah. So, but Gab is they're proprietary. They are partisan. I think that they have a right to exist. The deplatforming happening to them with their domain services and their cloud hosts, ditching them. I think that is just sort of a new level that, it is not a healthy thing for the internet. I mean, they have a moderation policy. I don't necessarily agree with their strategy as a company. I consider the true alternative social networks to be open source and decentralized. So because if you're not open source, you are really nothing new. You're not a new paradigm. You're not giving the community the ability to peer review your platform.
And just to be clear for non-techies, when you say open source, it means the algorithm you use to populate the content feed for people is right there and transparent, and you could look at it in the same way you'd look at script for a program you were writing.
Yes.
Okay.
It means all of the code is public, not just the algorithms of the newsfeed, but including the algorithms of the newsfeed. Anyone could actually take our code right now and make their own app based on our code. And we actually encourage that. And that's why there's this beautiful thing happening in the tech world where open source software is winning. I mean,
are you the Linux of social media networks?
That would be the goal. Yeah.
The business field is littered with the carcasses of old social media networks. I'm old enough to remember MySpace. I had a MySpace page once. What are the cautionary tales you've learned from other social media platforms that have become obscure?
We had a basic principle in mind from the beginning, which was fully free and open source, fully transparent, protecting people's privacy. We don't force anyone to, give us personal information, and we're moving towards a distributed architecture. So time after time, we see new alternative, quote unquote, alternative social networks pop up. And I truly believe that because they have restrictive content policies, because they're not transparent, I see carcasses everywhere.
But Facebook isn't transparent, and it has like 2 billion users. Like the average user, right. The average user doesn't understand the cable TV package they get, but they still love watching. They like other people making decisions for them.
Well, the Linux analogy is good because, we had servers that dominated pre-Linux. And then Linux came through and said, look, I'm going to do the same thing that those servers are doing, but I'm going to give it away to everybody. And then, Facebook and Google have built products that have proven to be demanded by society as communication tools. So, they did it in a proprietary way. Now we know that society wants that. And so we're going to, unfortunately, we have to rebuild the whole thing because they're not sharing their code. If they would share their code, then we would have actually been helping them build something even more cool that we don't even know about.
You can't build an open source version of Facebook because it's impossible.
Well, that's essentially what we're doing. But
without the Facebook brand or
no. Facebook's code is all secretive. Yeah. So this is just an inevitability. We saw it's really interesting what's happening with Tumblr. Did you see what happened with them recently?
I'm not a Tumblr fan, so I missed the news.
So Tumblr got kicked off the Apple Store for child porn, which it didn't, their moderation missed somehow. And then about a week ago, they came out and said that they're banning all sexually explicit content minus like a couple of edge cases with like art. And even the mainstream media has criticized them for this. Like TechCrunch, Wired has said that, these sort of subculture groups of erotica and, certain types of these communities are really, they've always used that for Tumblr. Tumblr has always allowed nudity. Twitter even allows nudity, which is strange, and people don't really realize that. But interestingly, the app stores don't ban them for that. They also don't ban Twitter for all of the insane content.
Again, I'm old enough to remember when it was the government that we feared telling us that you couldn't look at naked pictures.
Yeah.
Now it's Apple and it's big companies.
Tim Cook's speech last week was chilling. Yeah, I don't know if you've watched it. I'll send it to you.
It seemed Some people have called it cultish in the sense that he was sort of advocating a very rigid position on where everybody must stand in regard to internet content.
Yeah, and such a sort of arrogance about what making the world a better place entails and what that looks like. And that, was the speech for the ADL?
That I couldn't say.
I think he was maybe getting an award for the ADL, but he mentioned the ADL in the speech.
The Anti-Defamation League.
Right. And so it is out in the open. They are the ones deciding what content is acceptable and what content is not acceptable. That's what they all seem to be doing now. And you would think with so many brilliant people, because there are brilliant people at these companies. I mean, there are internal wars happening with these decisions in these companies too. So it's not as if like they are automatically 100% evil. There's forces within them that I think want to change, and I hope that it can go in that direction. But I would think that they would know that there's a huge market opening for a social network that is just open. And
I don't presume to know Tim Cook's state of mind, but I do know that when I've interviewed people at tech companies, one of their biggest priorities is recruiting smart people. And they sometimes feel that recruiting smart people means adopting corporate postures that are very much in line with the way your average super smart, urban, 24-year-old genius thinks, which, often that means progressive politics. We have no tolerance for this. We have no tolerance for that. So you do get, we saw this with the James Damore reaction from Google. And I wanted to, using that as a baseline, because it is something that people are talking about in Silicon Valley. That's the sort of groupthink that arises out of the need to recruit and please young, smart workers. Your politics seem very different. I don't presume to know how you label yourself, but you sound libertarian. And is that out of step with the super progressive, neo-Victorian Silicon Valley ethos?
I mean, I don't like labels. I think that there's a funny fusion between rational, progressive, and libertarian people. There's sort of a meeting place, and that's where I tend to exist. And I think that actually is what is going to attract the widest spectrum of people to use a platform, because you have rational people on both sides, and you need to be open to that. Otherwise you're doomed. I mean, while I remember this, have to bring it up. The Instagram co-founders just left because they hate what's happening at Facebook. The WhatsApp founder, Brian Acton, left WhatsApp because he hates what Facebook is doing to their product. Facebook owns both these companies. The Oculus guy basically Facebook forced him to say that he likes Gary Johnson and not Trump. And so literally all the companies that Facebook has bought, which are propping it up right now.
The head of Oculus was almost publicly shamed, essentially.
He was shamed, yeah. And so it's just incredible that these leaders of the companies that are a huge part of Facebook's success now are just jumping ship. And there's so many people internally who are jumping ship. And so I don't think that it's really that attractive to as many people as you would think. And the people that we're hiring, they want respectful environments, but they also know that healthy societies are, likely driven by free speech. And free speech ultimately, and maybe we can get into some of these studies that have taken place about, the actual effects of censorship on societies.
Well, we don't want to do a spoiler because you are going to be writing something for Quillette about this subject.
Okay, all right.
And putting your thoughts in a full way. But so I know a little bit about what you think, that in the long run, that when you stifle free speach, it has anti-progressive effects.
Yeah, maybe we can just do a little teaser. Just that there's a whole anthology of studies and research projects that have shown that you can see increased radicalization, polarization, and even in some cases violence. I mean, I don't like to use this one example as as YouTube's fault for censoring, but you remember the YouTube shooter?
I do. I guess that was about a year ago.
Yeah, it was about a year ago. So for anyone who doesn't know, a woman, I forget her name, but she thought that she was being basically censored by YouTube.
She was we should say she was a very troubled person.
She was troubled. She was crazy, and there's absolutely no excuse for this type of behavior no matter what. It's certainly not YouTube's fault. Even if they have a crazy content policy, totally not their fault. But it happened. I mean, she thought her reach was being restricted. She thought she was being censored, and likely algorithms were involved, and she felt that this was happening, and so she went crazy, and she shot people in YouTube. And because what censorship does is it makes people feel like they're not able to express themselves, and that they're being silenced, and that can make people angry. So it's not a smart long-term decision. It's a short-term political decision to silence speech. It's only going to get pushed somewhere else.
A lot of people who hear you talk about blockchain and algorithms and open source and these buzzwords, I think they would assume that you had a technological background. I learned before our interview, and you've talked about it, that you studied English in university. The people you studied with, the people who graduated from your English program, what are they doing with their lives right now?
I have one really, really good friend who he actually majored in religion, but he was in a bunch of my English classes, and he's a PhD writing papers actually about this kind of stuff. But he's probably the only one. To be honest, a lot of my professors, I realize now that they had a serious agenda with regards to, I mean, UVM. You would expect that it's a progressive place. Well, Vermont has in the country has libertarian people, but in Burlington you have a huge progressive crowd. And now I realize that with the critical theory and the Marxist theory, those classes, I mean, I was being engineered. I go back and read some of my papers now, which maybe would be funny to publish as sort of a just expose on this.
Wait, so you're not? So it's not like you were the house conservative in critical race theory class. It sounds like you were ideologically in sync with your classmates back then.
I was definitely not. I wouldn't say a socialist, but I was definitely in the progressive world. But I thought that people like Ron Paul kind of spoke interesting things. But the group that I was in was gearing us towards this progressive agenda, and the classes, you had to read Marx, and
it doesn't sound like you're now some sort of flaming conservative. But what was it that steered you toward more of, I guess, classical liberalism or libertarianism? What was it that set you on the course to what you're doing now instead of the liberal arts?
Well, I just started to feel like there was a hypocrisy within, because a lot of these Marxists will call themselves anarchists, which is odd because, there's this authoritarianism sort of, the elephant in the room. And I just started looking at data and studies and show me the data that censorship works.
But you are a sort of anarchist. This idea of creating a social network that breaks down hierarchies and gives everyone the ability to create their own social networks with it sounds like you have a lot of faith in the grassroots ability of people to self-organize, which
crypto anarchy, I think, of course, is like some crazy ideal. That's great. The whole cryptographic movement is trying to do this. They're trying to create decentralized autonomous organizations, basically blockchain-powered companies where different stakeholders with different amounts of tokens can vote on the evolution of the company. It's sort of all, automated. And
but is this a sort of a new kind of geek utopianism?
Yeah, for sure. It's
so you're a geek utopian.
I don't think that Facebook. I'm not a utopian in the sense. It's not those companies are not going to disappear. We're not just going to extract all the problems from the world. I'm hoping that there can be conversations that occur, because I know these aren't stupid people, to just have them transform their practices. I think that the data should show, and actually from a business perspective, I hope that they can start to recognize that they're losing revenue by pushing advertisers away from certain content. I mean, by demonetizing all of these channels, that's making them less money?
A lot of these social media networks get branded according to the person who has the most power in the organization. So everybody knows who Zuckerberg is, and the more people get angry at Twitter for some of its new policies, the more Jack becomes a 4-letter word. When people mention Jack on Twitter, it's usually not to say, "Hey, thanks, Jack." Usually they're kvetching. In 10 years, if Minds become successful, will people be talking about Bill the way they talk about Jack? Does power corrupt even when it's used with the best of intentions to create this flat hierarchy that's entirely transparent?
My job is to engineer myself out of the equation. I mean, I need to. It's sort of inevitable.
But that sounds like the Marxists who say we're going to create a workers' dictatorship in order to engineer the workers' dictatorship out of history. Like, does anybody ever really follow through on that promise to engineer themselves out of the driver's seat?
Yeah, I mean, but we are walking the walk in the sense that you can take our code and create your own social network right now. Twitter never did that. Twitter came out the gates and they said, "Hey, you can have free speech here." I mean, there's amazing marketing screenshots.
To give credit Twitter their due, I mean, it's pretty free. Like lately, they've gotten some fixations on certain kinds of ideological stuff, but for most of Twitter's history, it's been free-ish. Yes.
I think it's getting unbearable.
It's getting bad, but Twitter has had a good run in terms of free speech.
Why do they need to cave? Where's the benefit? It seems to be hurting them so much more than it's helping them. And that, Jack, he doesn't seem like a bad guy, but it seems that he's just caving to this pressure.
I love how we talk about him like he's a supermodel who has a first name.
I would love to see, and that's the other thing. These people won't have conversations, because they have betrayed their communities so much that every PR engagement that they take is so sensitive. The deed's been done.
Well, so they will have conversations, but they're very scripted, and it's essentially a series of lawyered statements that. Whereas in your case, sounds like you don't have a publicist.
We have a PR team that we work with, but I think that my accessibility and transparency is crucial. And the thing is, we started fully dedicated to these principles. So for me to abandon them is, I could do that. But I don't know if I doubt our board would go for it. I mean, it is just not in our interest. It would cause our core community to just go completely insane. It would not make sense.
Is Minds profitable?
No.
When will it be profitable?
Last year we did an equity crowdfunding round where we raised $1 million from 1,500 members of our community, and they actually got stock. And then this most recently we did a Series A round. We just 2 months ago raised $6 million from a blockchain focused.
And how many full-time workers do you have?
10.
Okay.
And so profitability is essential. So we're really focused on helping creators earn money, because we think that if we help people earn money, then ultimately that's going to come back to us. We're going to be able to help serve ads and give people premium stuff. But it's a long road. Most social networks are not profitable right away. Almost no major social network that exists was they're hardly even still too profitable. I mean, Facebook obviously is, and Google does pretty well, but we're going to get there. We have to create a sustainable business model.
What's a good point of entry for people who want to learn what Minds is about and want to learn about some of these functions involving cryptocurrency and that sort of thing?
If you go to minds.com/token, that is an important page for showing context about who we are and how the ecosystem works. There's a good video on there that explains it. It's a good spot.
And if I just want to post cat videos and rail about politics, I can do that too, right?
Oh yeah, those are trending. I think there's a few cat gifs trending right now. That is the most important thing. And the algorithms are going to scare people away from even Instagram and these other outlets, because even if you don't care about technology or privacy or cryptocurrency or anything, when teenagers who post selfies and cats see their likes going down and they're like, and this is kind of sick, but dopamine levels are connected to this. Depression is connected to how many likes teenagers are getting.
I'm a dad. I have 3 girls. I've seen that happen.
Yeah. So as they strangle the reach further, they're causing depression. I mean, that's documented. So people are going to be looking for ways to be heard. I think that's what people want. Doesn't matter who you are, posting a meme or a scholarly article, you want to be heard.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a production of TNKI Media. Good talk.